And joining me now on the show is Senator Ralph Babet. Ralph, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Appreciated.
Appreciate your time today, and there's a lot to cover off on. And you were in the news, you made the mainstream this week with a transparency gotcha question. Fill us in how you tricked Penny Wong and got them to admit something that they didn't want to.
Well, it was a bit of a simple one, but I think she may have potentially seen it coming. But basically, what I asked Minister Wong about was I asked her about transparency. Did you think that the former Morrison government was transparent? Of course, in a roundabout way, she said no, she didn't think that they were transparent in a roundabout way anyway. And I pulled up the numbers for her. In the Senate, we have something called the Order for Production of Documents, when the government's going to provide the Senate documents about whatever it wants. The Morrison government, Mr. Morrison, who had multiple ministries under his belt, his government authorized the release of 48.7% of documents that the Senate asked for. This new Labor government, this new transparent Labor government, that's going to be, have a kinder, gentler politics, like the Prime Minister was saying during the election campaign. 20.4% of documents were handed over when the Senate asked for it. So essentially, the Labor government is, in my opinion, twice as secretive as the former Morrison government. Not a good start, Mr. Albanese. Not a good start at all.
No, it's not. It's quite disappointing. But Ralph, we're all seeing it across the country now. It's just weeks out before the referendum, and Anthony Albanese still refuses to come clean with detail that the country is begging for. And it's just been testament to the results now. We're now seeing an absolute majority for the no, which looks like this referendum may well be dead in the water.
I'm hoping it is dead in the water. I'm hoping it is. I mean, anyone that wants to, bring race back into our nation's founding document, that wants to divide our nation along racial lines, I don't think that that's a good thing. And God willing, the majority of Australians agree, and we can see an absolute tanking of this referendum. And hopefully it goes down, and that's the end of that. And we never talk about race again, because I think we should be removing race, because at the end of the day, we're all one color. We're all green and gold. That's it.
Well said. And Tony Abbott also backs that up. We are the most colourblind country in the world. And this idea of divisiveness just doesn't sit well with egalitarian Australia. Now, I want to go to what I would call a really positive move in our parliament, Ralph, and that is to do with politicians from both sides of the political divide heading over to the US to go and fight for the freedom of Julian Assange.
Absolutely. Now, there is a small amount of our parliamentarians heading over there. I don't know how many there are. I think there's about 5 or 6 of them heading over there to, present the case to have Julian Assange hopefully pardoned and sent home. That's what I believe. He should be pardoned and sent home. And if he has to answer for anything, he should do so to the Australian people right here at home. Now, I was a signatory of the letter that is going to be handed over to the Americans. And essentially, I believe he's an Australian citizen. He's been punished enough. And at the end of the day, what did he do? He exposed war crimes, basically, is what he did. Maybe he could have gone about it in a different way. There's an argument to be made there, but he suffered enough, and he needs to be brought home. If any answering needs to be done, he can answer to the Australian people.
The old saying, don't shoot the messenger, and all of a sudden we've forgot entirely what's going on here. And you're right, all he did was expose war crimes and embarrassed the United States government, and that's the reality of what he was doing.
Actually, Chelsea Manning has been pardoned. If Chelsea Manning can be pardoned and is now living their lives freely, there's no reason why we can't do the same for Julian Assange.
Absolutely. And the final story that I want to touch on briefly, Ralph, was that you introduced an indemnity bill to stop vaccine companies or big pharma being protected by the government. Well, Donald Trump is also coming out swinging and talking about now that these vaccine companies, these big pharma companies, have to come clean with the damage that they're causing.
Absolutely. There's an argument to be made that at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know, there was no information. We were all in the dark. And, perhaps, I'm not saying we were, but perhaps, and it's worth looking at, we were misled by these big pharmaceutical vaccine companies. Perhaps they cared about their profits a little bit more than what they cared about safety and efficacy, in my opinion. And there's definitely a case there, and we need to have a full, frank and open debate and discussion about it. Let's look into it, and let's make sure that if there was, I'm not saying that there has been, but if there was any wrongdoing, let's bring these people to account and let's make them responsible for what they've done. If there was any wrongdoing.
Well, absolutely. There are more and more questions involving COVID, and we still want to see Anthony Albanese come out with his COVID Royal Commission, which has gone very, very quiet. And therefore, it seems that the idea of not wanting to find out means that there must be something under the covers that they don't want to come out, Ralph.
It certainly seems that way. I mean, Miss Albanese, prior to the election, he said we will have a Royal Commission as soon as we can. The World Health Organization has now said that COVID is no longer a state of emergency. Back to normal, everybody. But Mr. Albanese still doesn't want to hold this Royal Commission. And I've heard off the grapevine over the last couple of days that they're potentially not going to have one at all, and they're going to have a simple inquiry instead. Now, a simple inquiry, it will not have the powers of a Royal Commission, and I think what we're going to see here is we're going to see an attempt made by those in power to sweep everything under the rug. Nothing to see here. So much for transparency.
Absolutely. And I just spoke to the leader of the Democracy New Zealand Party this week, Matt King, about the Royal Commission in New Zealand, and he also called it another Clayton's inquiry. And Senator Ralph Babet, thanks for your time today on World Series News.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.